Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday webinar Work-Based Learning series. I'm so excited to see everyone here, and we're glad that you're here for today's webinar, the very first in this series. These series are designed to provide you with valuable insights and networking opportunities related to work-based learning. Today's topic is building strong employee relationships and navigating legal exemptions in work-based learning. We have a well-versed, informative, and dynamic speaker who will share her advice, share her experience, her expertise on this important subject. There will be a question and answer at the end of the period, at the end of the session. If you would like, please introduce yourself in the chat. Please remember to stay muted during the presentation so that we can avoid background noise. And to hear when we have our question and answer period, please turn on your audio, your headphone speakers when it's time for the Q&A. If you wish to be seen, of course, turn on your camera at that time. If you would like, you can ask questions by typing them into the chat or raising your hand. This session is being recorded. Attendees, you guys will receive credit for the live sessions. I have not, if you have a AI robot that can record notes for you, those will not be admitted into the session. Just wanted to let you know that, again, this will be recorded and transcribed and put on the Moodle for viewing purposes later. Again, thank you for joining us. I know that you will receive a wealth of information from Mrs. Crystal Fulcher-Hawks. So let's welcome her today. And Crystal, it's all yours. Let me say one thing. I just need to say this right quick. Crystal, I'm sorry. I am having internet difficulties right now. So if I get booted out, I will come back in. We will continue to proceed as normal. Just wanted to let you know that if I got kicked out. But thank you, Crystal.
Good morning, Jean, and we hope you don't get kicked out. If you do, we'll admit you back in, okay? Thanks so much for the introduction, and I'm so excited this morning to be speaking to fellow CDCs around the state of North Carolina. I'm going to share a little bit briefly about myself and then a little bit briefly about our program, and then go into a lot more about building relationships with businesses and then navigating the laws around students in the workplace. So I serve as Executive Director of Surrey Yakin Works. I was a career and technical education teacher. I taught family and consumer sciences for 12 years in high schools in Stokes County. I also taught work-based learning. So mainly the classes I taught were early childhood and teacher cadet. So my students were out in internships throughout the week. And I really enjoyed that aspect of them getting that experience of what I was teaching them in class and then what they were learning in the workplace, in the real life exposure. So I absolutely enjoyed that process so much, and it was a great foundation for where I am now. I moved on from there and became a college liaison at a high school. So I was tasked with all of the students who were at that high school and getting to know them and helping them with their high school CCP and CTE options and their college options and getting them ready for the next step. I moved from there to start a program in Surrey County Schools called the Next Generation Career Academy, and it was a work-based learning program. We started that in 2018 with a Golden Leaf grant. It was very successful, and it was about taking students who were in CTE courses and then doing that next step of getting them into paid internships. That was very successful. That was a partnership with Surrey Community College, and it was so successful that we were able to expand it to what it is today of Surrey Yakin Works. So I'm going to share a little bit about that. Jean's going to be manning the chat. So if you have questions throughout this presentation, feel free to Put those in the chat. And then also at the end, I plan to stop around 9:45 or before if we get done, and have some time for us to talk and ask questions and go through some possible scenarios or things like that that you have. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. Okay. Hopefully, I'm going to maximize that. Does everyone see my screen now? It's hard on my end to see.
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. So we're going to be talking about forming partnerships in work-based learning. The first thing I said I would be sharing with you is what is Surrey-Yadkin Works. We are a 4 public school system and community college partnership. In January of 2021, once again, the program was only with 1 school system in the community college. We had 4 school systems that fed into our community college, so that's when we expanded it. So we moved into a multi-regional. We have 2 counties involved in our program: Elkin City Schools, Mount Airy City Schools, Surrey County Schools, and Yadkin County Schools. We all work together with Surrey Community College to support the economic vitality of our region. And this is about matching pre-apprentices to meet the needs of the community and business partners. When I started this program off, we just did internships, and then we moved to pre-apprentices in 2022, just 2 short years ago, because we found that was going to be the best way for our local business and industry students to earn a national credential by being a part of a pre-apprenticeship, and then they're eligible to become an apprenticeship, go into an apprenticeship afterwards. So that's where we transition from interns to apprenticeships. But together, the 4 school systems in the community college, together we prepare students for work-based learning. We assist with industry-recognized credentials, and we encourage enrollment in career and technical education high school classes and college courses. In addition, we provide mutually beneficial links between students and employers with the goal of increasing a skilled workforce in our community. So we did have a lot of data about our students in the 2 counties of Surrey and Yadkin, that they were not aware of what was available to them in the workplace. And the college-bound students, particularly the 4-year college-bound students, really felt like they did not have options for employment in our community, when they really did, but they just weren't aware. Because as we all know, a lot of these businesses don't have great relationships with the K-12 system. It's challenging for them. They feel like they're too young. They have all kinds of barriers that they perceive. And so our students just weren't aware of the wonderful opportunities that were available to them in our local community. So that's one of our big pillars of our program, is getting our students that awareness, and then helping our business and industry get local talent too. So our triangle does have a symbol to it. This is where government, business, and education are working together to form it. As you can see, education is our base of our triangle, because we really believe it's our job to teach these critical leadership skills, interpersonal communication, help build them for a successful workplace transition. And that includes all of the following work-based learning that we all do: job shadowing, internships, pre-apprenticeships, apprenticeships, all of those things. We feel like that is a super important base that we do, that we make sure is provided for each student. Our business and industry makes up one of those sides of our triangles, because this is where it's really important to connect our students and our businesses together to not only increase that skilled workforce, but also to really bring together all those concepts that students are learning in school, and make sure students do understand the relevancy and the real world application for those. Businesses being involved in our program has been one of the most amazing things that's been transformed our 4 school systems, because our businesses are heavily involved in our school systems now. And then our government, we are funded by our local government. Our county commissioners do fund our program, but we really believe it's our government, our local government truly believes it's their job to support the economic vitality of our community. So we have to form partnerships with education and business, so that way we can have that skilled workforce for the future that's here and local. So that's where our triangle comes from. How is Surrey-Yadkin Works different than your traditional career development coordinator and internships at your high schools? We work really, really closely with our CDCs in all of our 4 school systems. They are really a part of our team as much as we're a part of their team. Excuse me. It's really important that people don't see this as another, like a competing program. And it's not. We are hand in hand working with our CDCs to make sure we have the right fit for the student. So sometimes the right fit for a student is a job shadowing because that's what they need right now. Sometimes the right fit for a student is a traditional internship so they can explore, go for a class period and explore a business. And sometimes the right fit for the student is our program, which is more job intense, where they're going to be working at least 12 hours a week. Most of our students are about 12 hours a week at their pre-apprenticeship opportunities. How we differ a little bit than traditional CDC, the CDC program, is we set up business partners first. So we work with local businesses in the community by building relationships with them and getting specific jobs that they know they want students to be in. And then we recruit the students for those positions. So if we have a company who is interested in marketing, then we are looking for students who are taking the graphic design classes at our high schools and community college level, things like that, sports marketing or any marketing classes in the business classes. So we're looking for specific students to fill those spots that our businesses have. And then our businesses interview the students. They have a real life interview. We do attend with them. It's a lot of fun because we get to actually teach them. We teach them beforehand. We do some mock interviews, and then we help them out during that process too. But our businesses have real interviews, and they're really selected for this 4-month pre-apprenticeship experience because it is a semester. And then we have some training with them, with the students at the community college level. That's all free for them. Those students receive some public speaking, Microsoft Office, DISC behavior, introduction to lean, OSHA, and employability. We use Working Smart as our curriculum for that at the community college level. So they're receiving a lot of support as well as they're going through that pre-apprenticeship experience. And then, like I said earlier, they have to have a minimum of 3-hour block of time, and 12 hours a week is our minimum time. So that's a little bit about Surrey-Yadkin Works, how we are a little bit different, but we work hand in hand with our school career development coordinators to find these right students and then figure out what's the best fit for them. Is a traditional internship at our high school the best fit, or is a Surrey-Yadkin Works pre-apprenticeship the best fit for them? So I'm going to move into talking about how do we get business partners. I do know, and maybe not in everyone's community here, but in many communities, it can be challenging for businesses to want to work with the K-12 system. They like to focus on the community college or college level students a lot. They feel like, you know, if they're under 18 and they're still in high school, that's not for us, right? You know, that's not necessarily the right fit for us. Those are the students that maybe are more retail jobs or grocery stores, things like that. And so it does take some finessing to get some really big business partners. I just did a quick screenshot of some of our business partners, and these businesses are anywhere from places that have 10,000 or more employees to places that have 5 employees. But, you know, Altec is one of our leading business partners, and they're all over the United States, and they're internationally well known. And so how do you get into those larger businesses that maybe you could have an opportunity to really have, you know, have a lot of different opportunities for students? Because, you know, I think about some of these big businesses that I have, like Altec. It's so great because I have engineers there, I have accounting there, I have welders there, I have assembly, I have maintenance, you know, I have students who are interested in all kinds of other areas, IT, because they are this huge business, and a huge business can give you lots of opportunities for students. So how do you navigate that? Well, I'm going to give you some examples of how I did and how it was successful for me. First of all, I had a few business champions, and I asked them for help. I had really 2 businesses that I had worked with previously. We had a really good working relationship, and they were well known in the community. They're good community leaders, stewards of our community, and so I asked them for help. I asked both of them. I would have lunch with them frequently. We'd talk about plans or ideas of businesses that I wanted to get my foot in the door, and they would do it for me. They would call their contact that they knew there. A lot of times, both of these were presidents or vice presidents of the company that I had these relationships with, and they were able to call their peer that they've known for a long time and say, you should really give this girl a chance. Let her come in and meet with you and talk to you about this opportunity of working with high school students and what that looks like. So that was very helpful for me to have that opportunity for these businesses to talk to their own peers and tell them to give me a chance. I also still attend, but I attended every single Chamber of Commerce, the EDP, and your local community may not call it the EDP, but it's the Economic Development Partnership, or the EDC. It's economic development that is funded by the state of North Carolina. The Human Resources Association, most counties have a Human Resource Association that is affiliated with the State Human Resource Association, where all HR directors attend, like a monthly. In my county, we do it quarterly meeting. I attended every single event I could attend and just started introducing myself to people. And I also would be very strategic about those events. Let's give an example of my businesses here on this list. If somebody from Bottomley Trucking was there, Bottomley Trucking is huge trucking in the western part of the state. If somebody from Bottomley Trucking was there and I knew I really wanted to get my foot in the door at Bottomley Trucking, just have a meeting with them, I would strategically make sure somebody was there to introduce me to them so we could talk and talk about our program. So I really worked hard to get my foot in the doors of these businesses that were great businesses in our community, wonderful businesses, but really had no K-12 presence. They just weren't interested in K-12. I also started serving on local committees. Any committee that came up, I would volunteer to serve. Whether it was Chamber of Commerce, EDP, the Workforce Board, I serve on the youth department of our Workforce Board, anything that came up that I knew I was going to be able to get my foot or my face in front of local businesses, I made sure I got there, because it's really about building relationships. These businesses, they just don't have a lot of ties. Many of them don't have ties to K-12, and they need to build a good relationship and see what's available to them. And so it was a lot about building relationships and getting my face out there and meeting people. Then after I did get a business who was interested, that's when I needed to meet with one of the leaders at the business and discuss their needs and concerns. We really tried to start with like upper level folks, people who could make decisions. If you have a great HR manager who can make a lot of decisions, that's a good way to start. But sometimes HR gets stopped in their tracks. So vice president level, president level, those are the levels I was going for. Because those are the people who can say, yes, we can do this. So then what I would do is I would meet with those businesses, and I would also tour the businesses and look and get an understanding of the jobs that were available to them. That was super important to me, as I love high school students and I care greatly about the students and their success and also their safety. So going and seeing all of the jobs, these types of positions that my students may be able to do is really, really important. And, if I don't get a good feel for it, maybe I like the business, but I say, this doesn't seem like it'd be the best place for a student in it, but this department looks like it would be a great department for a student to work in, and why. I go through that route with the business and explain, because I wanted it to be successful for the business and I want it to be successful for the student. So keeping that in mind is really important when I go and meet with businesses and discuss this. So you have a business partner, okay? What's next? What do you do next? So first of all, you're really going to discuss the student and the employer expectations. We have some handbooks for our businesses about what are the expectations for students and for the business. We set the bar that, and one thing I tell my businesses when I'm sitting down to meet with them is, if you want an intern, then you're going to get an intern. But if you want an employee, treat them like an employee. So it's really important that they have their own workspace. If everybody's getting a turkey at Thanksgiving, they're getting a turkey too. All of those kinds of things that you want to include them in, that's really an important thing to set up. And our businesses have embraced that greatly. And our businesses embraced it so greatly. They invite me. Like I go to family days at these businesses for their annual picnic and things like that, because they have really embraced that culture of, we don't just want an intern. We are looking at hopefully future employees, and that way we want to treat them like this. So we set that up from the get-go with our businesses and going over the handbooks with them. And we have some mentor guidelines with our training and orientation process and things like that. And then we have our student handbook that has a lot of their responsibilities that they are going to need to be following as they get into this pre-apprenticeship. Agree on a work plan with the business and the intern and the student, and for that internship experience. So we do have a work plan and a memorandum of understanding, and it's a clearly defined job of what you're going to be doing. Now, maybe you'll be doing more than that. Like we'll say, learning in other departments, shadowing, or doing small tasks in other departments. But what is the main thing the student's going to be doing? Are they going to be coming in every day and sitting there watching somebody? That's not necessarily the best way to set it up. And I think as CDCs, as workforce development specialists, we are, it's our job to help coach that business to what it looks like. My husband years ago had an intern, and local high school CDC, and I knew that it was not in my county, it was another one, set it up, and it was like, I don't know, month. We're into month 2, and I said something to him. How's it going with your intern? He's like, well, he just sits there every day. And I was like, what? I mean, I was blowing up that my own husband had this intern, and he just lets him sit there every day. And I was like, what are you doing? Why is he just sitting there? He's like, well, he only comes from 8 to 9 because he's got to get back to school. And that's all the lady told me to do with him. They just need to watch and see what I do. So I was like, no, we cannot just let them sit and watch something every day. They've got to have some hands-on experience. So I intervened in that one, and I helped him with designing a few projects that the student could work on while he still had the rest of the semester. So we've got they are not teachers. They did not go to school to become teachers. Some of them are natural teachers. I'll tell you that. We've had some of our best mentors. I thought, gosh, you should have been a teacher. But they're not teachers. So they don't necessarily understand, what do I do with this student? And how do I make this an engaging experience for them? So they need some help with that. And that's our job, is to help them with that. It's also when our student expresses those concerns with us, it's our job to go in and mediate with the employer, the mentor, and help them plan something and some ideas, some things that they may maybe find more engaging for the student. And then that last bullet, I wanted to take a moment to share with you about finding the right student for that business. So that getting to know the business, getting to know the job, walking it, seeing what they're doing. When you have a business partner that's really trying to invest in this, you want to send them the right student. You want to send them a student that they're going to feel like at the end of the day is not a babysitting role, because let's just face it, when we're dealing with these businesses and we're talking to them about K-12, they're thinking about kids and that they aren't able to do anything, and they're only on their phones, and they're getting into trouble. That they always come up with the worst case scenario with students. So when you do have a new business partner, you really want to make sure it's the right student and the right fit. I have business partners now that I have had for years that I'm willing to sit down and have a tough conversation with them on and say, I've got this student that I really want y'all to take. And it's gonna be some challenges. Okay, there's gonna be some challenges with him or her. And here's why they have these challenges. But I really want them to have this opportunity to see if they can do this, if we can build them up and do this. That is a relationship I've had with a company for years of success, 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 success. Now I can give you my opportunity youth student, my disengaged student, my student who just really needs a leg up in life, because you've had so much success, you're willing to invest in a student that may have some difficulties or some issues. Putting those students in first when you're first starting with a business is not a good idea. You want them to have lots of student success before they are willing to take on some project students that you feel like really need some support and help. And I have great relationships with many of my businesses now that do that. And lots of those project students are very successful and still employed there because we built this great relationship. And we also supported those students, but the business and the mentors were at the position where they could do that at that point in time. If we had done that right off from the bat, I probably would have lost the businesses completely. So I think it's really important that you put the students at the right business. In this particular picture, this student is working at our government, at the Yadkin County government office. They needed someone who was bilingual. They needed someone who was highly efficient in Microsoft and some other areas, and someone who had some experience with meeting and greeting people. And so we made sure when we went through our interview process of students, we got the right fit for them. They used him they had him in this pre-apprenticeship for a whole year, and paid him a really great wage during this whole process. So they're willing to pay for great talent. It's just you got to make sure it's the right fit for them. Also, another big step that we have is our student advising. So we work with our high school counselors and our college success, and we work with our businesses to determine what courses. So a business may say, like I said, the Microsoft Office. So I made sure those students had CIS 110 or Microsoft PowerPoint, Microsoft Excel at the high school, making sure they had the right courses. So we really are trying to advise students also on the right courses and credentials that they need based on the business and industry and what they are seeing that they are needed. That's a very important part of this process of getting to know the student and the business. And the businesses really, really appreciate it. I feel like, once again, because they don't have a great relationship with K-12 to begin with, a lot of times business and industry don't feel like they have a voice. We all have our CTE business meetings yearly or twice a year with our Business Advisory Council. Some of those are really great. Some of those are done because we're required to have those meetings. So really listening to our businesses and inputting what they have said has made a huge difference and why they feel like they are a partner in our students' education. So when we say, yeah, you've told us that this credential or this course was really important, we made sure that these students were enrolled in that, and as we're placing them here at your place of business. That has given a lot of buy-in to our business partners. And we are serving a little over, in this semester, we'll be I believe we'll be close to 140 business partners that I work with of placing these students into paid opportunities. And so we really have formed strong relationships with them and listen to them and listen to their concerns and then follow up with that and then help students navigate what does that look like in the high school setting? What kind of course would that look like? What credentials do I need for that? Now, I want to talk about the laws around WBL. So all of that previous talk was about building relationships with businesses. We've got some relationships with businesses, and maybe they want to pay them or maybe they don't want to pay them. What does that look like? Please feel free to ask any questions. Like if you had any questions about building relationships with business partners or suggestions or ideas. So when we talk about the laws around work-based learning, first of all, it's very clear under federal guidelines that if a student is earning credit, that could be high school credit, that could be college credit, an employer does not have to pay a wage. The federal guidelines, what they say is they are earning a wage through a course credit. Okay, so sometimes people say, oh, it's illegal to have somebody here and not pay them. It's not. It's not illegal. The only time it is illegal is if they are not earning any kind of associated credit with an institution. If a student is an unpaid intern, got an unpaid internship, they do not have to complete a youth employment certificate with North Carolina. Now, I'm on first name basis with the North Carolina DLL ladies. We work together quite a lot. They do recommend that a youth employment certificate is completed for every single intern in the state of North Carolina. That is going to be up to you, whether you want to do that. We're going to look at that process. They just like to have it on file, but by law, it does not have to be completed because they are not getting a wage. Now, let's talk about if they are getting paid. Now, I'm going to get into some nitty gritty here, okay? And there's a lot when dealing with this, and I'm going to try to be as clear and concise as possible. There are 3 work areas that must be considered. Area 1 is, does it fall under a normal job that a high school student can do, someone who's under 18? If you're unsure, you can always call wage and hour, but an office assistant, right? IT, help assisting in IT, getting paid, those kinds of things, those would be normal, would be considered youth certificate. You will follow the youth certificate. Hopefully my screen is following the links. Okay. You will follow the youth certificate directions. They do start with step 1, the youth fills it out, and then it is sent to the employer. The employer approves, parent, guardian sign off on it, and then the youth certificate is issued. Please note, this just changed like 2 or 3 years ago. The process, it's all computerized now. One thing I want to say about this is it's really important. It's very, very different when most of y'all were a youth and had to do this. You got to go to the courthouse, get your permit. Your permit lets you work anywhere. A youth certificate no longer follows the student. It's for that student and that business. So let's just say a student works fast food. They work at McDonald's, they have to file a youth certificate. They quit there and they go to Taco Bell, they've got to fill out another youth certificate for Taco Bell. The youth certificate is for that student to work at that business. And then it's null and void when that student is no longer at that business. So it's very easy. We navigate this very easily. If you've not done this before, you do have to get the person, do have to know who gets the YEID number. The student will be sent a YEID number. It's their youth employment identification number. And they will have to send that to the person at the business that's in charge of that onboarding, whether it be HR, a manager, whoever that is. So you do need to know who's going to be that person at the business, who's going to take care of this youth certificate before you get this process started. So that way it's easy for the student to send that to them via email. But it's pretty simple. It's a pretty simple process that you have to follow. But like I said, the phone number is on there. If you're like, I'm not sure if this is a normal job, you can always call and they will tell you whether or not it would be considered a normal job that would fall under the youth employment certificate process. Now, Area 2. Area 2 doesn't fall under a detrimental area. And these are outlined by the North Carolina Department of Labor. I am really, there's been some great work. I am really proud in 2019, we worked really hard with our local senators. At that point in time, it was Senator Berger and Senator Ballard with my business champions, those business champions I told you about that I met with a lot earlier. I love those business champions. We worked with them, and we got the law changed in North Carolina to allow students to work in detrimental areas if they were in an approved internship program. This was really important for us to make sure that because we had too many students who were taking welding at the community college level, had their certification in welding, but were still 17 and they couldn't do that. So we worked with the North Carolina Department of Labor to get this law changed for everybody in the state of North Carolina because we felt like this was so important. So these are clearly outlined in the North Carolina Department of Labor Supervised Practice Youth Work-Based Learning Experience, and here they are. There are 9 areas that North Carolina says are detrimental and that youth can work in this. A supervised practice youth work-based learning experience can work in this, who are 16 and 17 years old that are participating in a supervised experience. And here are the areas. As you can see, it includes welding, it includes being an electrician. However, let me make this very clear that just because you have a welder that you want to go put out doesn't mean they can just do everything at that business in welding with them being 17. There are specific tools and things like that that they are approved to use, and there are specific tools and that they are not approved to use. And that's where the help with the North Carolina Department of Labor comes in of placing this. So I'm going to use one of these occupations. Let's say welding's pretty simple because of the tools, but it could be number 6, following of 10 or more. You know, like my students who work in HVAC. Often I fill this out for them because like I have several commercial HVAC, so they're going to get on top of buildings to work on their HVACs in their systems. But let's use welding as this example because that's a pretty easy one to use. So let's say I have a student in welding. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the application and start this process. And I know this looks a little scary. I do want to say, I'm going to try to, hopefully you can see that a little bit better. You do want to make sure that you have read this very carefully, that this agreement, that you are following this agreement. The student is required to be enrolled in a school. It's not full-time employment. You know, it's definitely following all of these guidelines that have been set up. I also want to say, I don't put students in these areas unless they've had experience in these areas. These are the students who finished their welding certification. They're in all the electrical classes. They're in the HVAC classes. They're doing all of this in class, right? They've had this experience. Some of my students are farm kids, and they've been doing this on their farms for years and years and years. And I have documented proof that they have this experience. So I'm not putting the kid that likes to play with fire in this welding pre-apprenticeship experience. I'm putting the right student. So I know it's the right student. I've got the right business. It's welding. So then I'm coming down and I'm following through with the instructions. Okay. So I get this process started with this, and I come through. I put the student's name and their school, and then I fill in the employer name, their business, their address. I know the date of my semester start and the date of my semester ends. And then I let the business fill in these parts right here. So the business fills in, maybe they'll say welding assistant, okay? And the starting wage is $15 per hour. And then right here where it says detailed description of supervised, the business has to put in there a very detailed description of exactly what they're going to do as that welding assistant and what equipment they're going to be using as that welding assistant. And then the student signs it, their parent signs it, our principal signs it of that school, and the employer signs it. And then we send it in to the North Carolina Department of Labor for their attorneys to look over the job description, making sure all the equipment is falls into one of these 9 areas that is detrimental. And then you get an approved use certificate. Sometimes it usually takes a few weeks, but it could take up to 4 weeks for that to happen. I still have them at the business during that time. We follow a regular use certificate, and then they go do jobs that they can do with a use certificate. So maybe it's sweep, clean, if it's like a welder, other things that they can do in that department. Pack, a lot of it's like we're going to put them in shipping for 2 weeks or whatever. So we'll follow other positions because I don't want to stop the pre-apprenticeship experience. Like we don't want to wait for 4 weeks for this to get approved or 3 weeks or however long it takes. Knowing beforehand, I really try all of my detrimental areas. I really try to get those done several weeks before the semester begins. So that way it's usually only about a 1 week lag time for those students at the business, which is fine because they've got to do orientation, they've got to do safety, they've got to do all those things at that business. And so I would suggest that you get on that one pretty quickly if you know you're going to have a student in that detrimental occupation. Now, area 3 is a hazardous occupation. Hazardous occupation is defined by the federal wage an hour. I don't know why the state does detrimental and the federal government does hazardous. I don't know. These are just the rules. I can't explain it. But these are all outlined by the federal regulations, and they have a whole nother process. So what are they? Those are the hazardous occupations. There are several of them. Is it 9 or 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 of them that are outlined that youth, student apprentices, or student learners can participate in. And these are like power-driven woodworking, metal forming, power-driven meat processing machines, balers, compactors, power-driven machine paper products, circular saws, bandsaws, guillotines, chainsaws, roofing operations, and trenching and excavation. So we're going to look at these now and talk about what does it look like if the business is having them do a hazardous occupation. I've used these a lot as well. They're a little bit more simpler to use. So there is a great FAQ sheet. When you look at these, it talks about, the FAQ sheet is so great. It tells you what each occupation is, what each hazardous occupation is, and if students can do this or not. And there's good links on here of like, what is a student learner? And we're going to look at that in just a second. So I've left this in there. I think y'all are going to be getting a link to this. The FAQ sheet is really good. There is a very well defined, though, in subpart E of what that HO, that health occupation is. So we're going to look at the first one of what is an apprentice and student learner. So these are our exemptions. I'm not going to read these to you, but as you can tell, the student learner is y'all, right? This is the students enrolled in a course of study and training in a vocational training program, and is employed under a written agreement at the business. So this is the student who is in construction classes at your school and has done some used some power-driven tools, understands the use of power-driven tools, and is getting this internship at the business and is going to be using the power-driven tools. Okay. Now remember, those health occupations are clearly defined. Health occupation 1 was not on our list that students can do. That is about storing explosives. That was not on our list. So we can skip by health occupation 1, 2 was not on our list, 3 was not on our list, that's coal mining, 4 was not on our list, about forest fires, but 5 was on our list. Okay, occupations involved in the operation of power-driven wooden machines. So now this gives us all the definitions of what does it mean to work in an occupation in a power-driven woodworking machine. So once again, those are the tools they've learned in carpentry class or construction classes, okay? And this goes through what does it mean to have a power-driven woodworking machine and what are the exemptions? And here is the exemption. The exemption is this rule does not apply to students who are an apprentice or a student learner, which means they can have an internship or pre-apprenticeship at a business using those kind of tools if they qualify for that student learner definition that we looked at earlier. Okay, so you've got to pay attention to what is the equipment. You've got to be you're kind of in charge of this one on your own, because the federal Department of Labor wants you to read the rules and follow the process. There's no one to call necessarily to get help on that. So what do? Okay, here's what you do. Each such written agreement shall contain the name of the student learner and shall be signed by the employer and the school coordinator or the principal. Copies of each agreement shall be kept on file by the school and the employer. The exemption for the employment of student learners may be revoked if an individual or situation is found unreasonable or precautions have not been observed. So I have them placed at this student, at this business, they're going to use this power-driven equipment. We have this outlined in our work plan and a memorandum of signing. They sign it, I sign it, student signs it, and we file it. And that is all that has to be done with hazardous occupations in the state of North Carolina, or in the whole United States. We don't have to report it to the DOL. They have to have a regular use certificate for being there, but then this has to be on file, and that is it. It is very, very clearly written, but it's also a little scary because I like the NCDOL because I get that stamp of approval and they say, yes, you're good to go. And I know I'm good to go, but this one, it's clear, but it's kind of like we're trusting you to take care of this on your own. So you need to make sure you follow those policies. I will say the federal government does have a phone number that you can contact. Sometimes you can get through pretty quickly. One time I was on hold for 4 hours. But even when I've gotten through to them before to ask questions, a lot of times they'll say, did you read in sub 33 FR 12177, did you read this? And I'm like, yes, I read this. I'm asking you, is this correct? And they'll say, did you read it? Then you just need to infer. Like they won't say yes or no. I have found they just say you need to read that, and if it follows in that guideline, then you are okay. So it was a little scary, but I've been doing it for several years now, following these hazardous occupations. So I've gotten used to that work now at this point in time. I did want to let you all know that on our website, if you want to learn more about Surrey-Yakin Works, we have a playbook that goes through our whole program, so you can kind of see how we set up things. I have all of my handouts on there, the work plans on there, memory understanding, my handbooks, those handbooks I was talking to you about, all of those are on there as well in the playbook. They're in links in the playbook, so all of that is there for you for resources if you need to, if you would like to see that or use those. I did want to lastly mention we do adult transition and support. We don't just say goodbye to them at graduation. We have a team that supports them from pre-apprenticeship to apprenticeship. We work really closely with orienting them, getting them on board at the community college as full-time students, mentor training with our businesses as they transition to become an adult. We collaborate with a lot of folks here at the community college early alert systems. We still stay with them. That was my goal as a classroom teacher, as a high school CTE teacher. I really hated when they left and I thought they were ready to go. And then I'd see them 6 months later and they're like, oh, I didn't make it. It didn't work out. And I'm like, why? And I think, well, they didn't have that support that they had in high school from all of us. So that's one thing we have implemented here in our program. They continue to have that support after they graduate high school. We are still on their team and helping to navigate those next steps, whether it's work, whether it's military, or whether it's community college or four-year college. They have us to go through that guideline. That's really important for our process. I'm 1 minute over, okay? But I said I'd stop around 9:45 for us to have discussion. I would really appreciate if y'all would like to talk and not chat, but I get it. Some people may not be able to talk because you have a classroom full of students. So please feel free to use this time to ask some questions.
Crystal, that was wonderful information. Thank you so much for sharing lots and lots of wisdom. I do want to say, because I had watched your video earlier, I did put the waiver. It is in the workplace learning Moodle in the insurance, safety, and compliance, as well as the directions. What I do need to do is put in that frequently asked questions for the hazardous occupations. Make sure that I have that. But you guys, please feel free to raise your hand, put a question in the chat, come off mute and ask the question yourself. There's tons of information there. So will this presentation be shared? Absolutely. Absolutely. The actual recording will be housed in the Work-Based Learning Moodle. I'm actually going to put a link to it on that Google Doc of where all of the Work-Based Learning webinar series is located also. So good question.
I just put in the chat the frequently asked questions link. And then I also just made my presentation open to public, and it's there for you all to share and get those links off of as well.
Awesome.
I'd love some questions. So hard as a teacher talking to a screen, y'all know that, right?
I think it was just so much information, and of course, being the first week of school, it's kind of like, okay, how do I go about putting this into my plan of work? Mm-hmm. One of the questions I wanted to ask, are your handbooks, are they available on your website? Do you have that, or is that something?
They're in the playbook.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So in the playbook, there are links to everything, including on the evaluation system we use. All of that is in the playbook.
All right.
So what was the greatest barrier for you to overcome for the program? Gail, that was a really good question. And I would say that 16 and 17-year-olds could go into a workplace and be professional. That was my biggest barrier, right? Many of those first meetings that I had with upper management, I actually even had them laugh at my face. They didn't realize they were being rude because they live in a different world, but they laughed in my face thinking that me or students could ever do this work. And it has been an amazing transformation. One of those people did a huge apology to me, after about a year into the program, and is one of my champions now. I use that person all the time to go out and get other people and businesses. She says, I was a disbeliever because she had a teenager. And we all know our teenagers at home are not the same teenagers they are at school. Okay. Just like my little children are like demons at home, but the teacher's like, they're so good. I'm like, okay. So, that was my biggest barrier, was getting them to believe in me. And I'm promising you, I will give you the right student for you and your business, and you will see success. And then going out and working so hard with our school and the counselors and the teachers to make sure we did find those right students. But once we did, boy, did it snowball after that. It snowballed big time, about people in the community talking about how this is changing their labor market. This is changing their workplace, even attitude. So that's been great. Okay, so Glenda, how many did I start with? My first year, I started with 12. I had 5 or 6 businesses, and 12 students, so about 2 at each business. Small, great students. And then it just gets bigger. Right now, this semester will be a smaller semester. We have 110 this semester. In the spring, we'll have close to around 200. So I'll serve around 300 students a year, over 300 probably. So what are your intern numbers now? Yeah, so this semester is 110, and then it'll be 300 by the end of the year for sure. And our summer, we have summer, and we have adults also that we are doing in the summer in our program as well, which I've opened it up to adults because I had too many adults in the community say, how can I get involved in this? I'm trying to restart my life. I'm trying to stop working at Dollar General. I've been here for 5 years, and this is not the route I want to go down. So we are now, we have a whole adult division. So those numbers I just gave you don't include any of the adults. Those are only youth.
So, Crystal, I have a question for you. And I remember, first starting out, and I think we probably have some new people who are either work-based learning coordinators or career development coordinators who are handling the work-based learning. What would be your top 3 tips for them? Because this can be very overwhelming as you get started. But what would be your top 3 tips for them?
Start small. Start small, okay? One business, one student is really like all you have to do to get this started. I always say start small. And when I say, look, don't look at my numbers today. Look at my numbers when I started, right? So start small so that way you have the right business, the right student. Don't maybe start with one of these hazardous or detrimental areas. Don't dive into that yet, maybe, right? Dive into my Altech, my number one, and I don't want to blow your mind, but we've started a school inside of that Altech this year where we have disadvantaged youth inside of that building all day. We have teachers on site, and we have a school. That was my business that said no youth. One of mine said no youth. Now they have a school inside of them where I have a principal and teachers staffed there. So by building that relationship, I started with an office assistant for them. And I started with somebody in IT. That IT person was there for a year, went off to college for 4 years, and has now been full-time for them for 2 years. So big wins, start small. Those would be the small things I would tell you to do. And then it'll come as you go. But don't feel like you got to do all this grand work. Get one great business and a student for them. And that'll be a huge win, and then it'll grow from there. See, have you been able to work out to ensure students have access, including physical or cognitive disabilities? If so, can you share more? Yes. I do work with NCBCE as well. They have a couple of programs. If you're not familiar with NCBCE, I would highly recommend you do become familiar with them because they have some really great programs. They're out of the governor's office. It's the North Carolina Business for Education. I'm going to put their link into the chat. They have some great programs of students with autism and some other developmental delays. I also work with vocational rehab. So we work with our students where they are, and because our students, what I tell people is they don't. We want all of our students to become workforce ready. So we don't have a strict application process for our program. We don't have a GPA requirement, nothing. Don't we want all of our students to become workplace ready? So we figure out who that student is and what their needs are, and then help them with it and navigate those students with disabilities or any kind of challenges that they may have. There was a couple of questions of transportation. So we work with our schools to get, if they do not have transportation, we work with our school systems to transport them. Most of the time, I find that if we can get students there, they can get home, or if we can get them home, you know, which one of the way, right? So I sometimes have the yellow bus pick them up on a school route that morning, like they're going to school, but instead of the school stop at the school, we stop at a business. They drop them off at the business. They go in for 3 or 4 hours, and then we figure out a way to get them back. Our transportation is creative, very creative. From people picking them up, I mean, it's very, very creative the way we've worked on transportation. So I can't give you one set model. We just figure it out in the community. Like, who's going by there on a regular basis? Can we set that up 3 days a week or whatever? And then which did you identify first, the student or the business partner? We identified the business partner first. So we had our business partner, we had the job description they wanted to fill. Then I worked with the school counselors, the school teachers, the CDCs, the CTEs to figure out the right student for that fit of that business. Because they know the students, they're in their classes every day, all the time. They're talking to them about their dreams and their wishes and their goals in life. So our teachers are our best advocates for helping us figure out what's the right student fit. So good questions. I've answered them all so far. Any more questions? Yes. Oh boy, that is. Have you been able to serve any students who are not currently citizens? So this is the biggest challenge of my career that I would love to be able to solve before I end my career. Yes, they are served, but legally a business cannot pay them an hourly rate. That is the law. They can pay stipends. They can also support them in their process of becoming a U.S. citizen. But it is a challenge. So we do serve them, and we have them. I have them every semester in my program that do not have a Social Security card and are not documented, but a business cannot pay them an hourly rate. We can pay for, like I said, we could do some stipends, travel stipend for them to get there, helping out, things like that, but they cannot put them on their payroll as an employee if they do not have their Social Security number. I will say that I have one of those students that is still, she was in my first cohort in 2018. She is still full-time employed at that company in graphic design. And that company did sponsor. They sponsored her continuing her education at the community college as an in-state student, because a company can do that in North Carolina. And they sponsored her getting her citizenship through that whole process. So she is a U.S. citizen now and still employed at that company since 2018. So anyway, there are ways around it, but I'm going to tell you it is a heartbreaking process to go through, because some businesses will just say we cannot do that. And then others are willing to figure out ways to be creative. So yes, they cannot be paid an hourly rate if they are an undocumented citizen in the United States. Other questions? These were good.
Those are great questions, and we appreciate all of your experiences to be able to help us go through that. I'm like Gail just mentioned, those are some really interesting approaches to handling the situations. You're really thinking out of the box.
That's all we do here is think out of the box. How can we figure this out? What's the best fit? What's the best for students, and what's the best for the business? Following all these state and federal guidelines that sometimes we can't control. How can we make it the best situation for the student? And that's the goal.
It kind of seems like your underlying message is, we're not going to take no for an answer.
We don't take no for an answer. Yeah, and let me tell you, my businesses, we have I have like 40 students right now at one of our hospitals that's been there working there. They've been there for several years now. They told me no multiple times. This one told me no multiple times. I think of a no as no, not today. It doesn't mean not tomorrow or next month. or a week from now. That's how I process it. And when it comes to federal laws and things like that and state laws, we really work hard to even try to change those and meet with legislators and talk to them about why a law could be a barrier for a student. I just recently met with legislative staff from the federal government and discussed the health occupations and why I felt like that some of them were good and some of them needed to be revamped and things like that. So I'm constantly advocating for this approach across the state of North Carolina so we can continue this great work of getting our students workplace ready. We do not want them to continue to graduate from high school and feel like they are not ready for that next step. We want them already their foot in the door at that next step before they graduate high school.
Yes. Well, thank you. It is 10 o'clock and we value your time. If you have any questions, you guys, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Again, this recording will be put on the Moodle for viewing purposes later. I hope that you continue to have an amazing first week of school. Thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate all the work y'all do. Have a great year.